Hello, welcome to this month's CRC, coming at you from my truck. It's sunnier out than I thought, so video in the sun is not always fun. So I'm going to start it out from here and we'll get going. So it's going to be a little different this month. I'm going to show you our field plot. And you might have saw in some of our social medias that we were not going to plant this year. I think we said in June or July, and that was the goal. That was the plan, was to not plant because it just did not make sense this year. We had so much going on for our indoor reconstruction, and prices being where they were just wasn't worth growing outdoors. It broke my heart, but oddly enough, we got a call from Australia, a company I'd done some work with quite a few years ago, and they said, in our medical market, we are extremely limited in what we can grow, how we can grow it, and the price is where all of us wish it could be. And so they said, what can you grow? I said, oh boy, it is already June. We're kind of late. We're very late. But I'm sure you've heard me preach the importance of photo period control and the tools and, the power you can have by understanding the flowering initiation times of these plants and how you can manipulate them. So I want to show you what we did with a last minute planting. And to be honest, I am extremely pleased. I'm so pleased. So we planted this crop in the end of August. So I think actually August 30th. And they were cuttings, rooted cuttings, planted in the ground. And you might think, well, that is crazy. You're not going to get any size. You're not going to get any flower. And you're going to get frozen out. I was nervous because at least at our latitude, the first frost time is November 15th, which is a week away. And so not knowing if it could freeze or frost early, it was risky. It was very risky, but we've made it through so far, and so far so good. So we planted. We kept the plants awake by having photoperiodic lighting. And so I'll show you that in a minute. We ensured that we had at least 2 micromoles on all sides of the plants. And this kept the plants awake. And so by having these varieties that, as long as you're giving them over 18 hours of light, they'll stay vegetative. Once we cut the lights off, flower initiation starts. So we kept them awake for 3.5 weeks. And then today we are at week 6. And so we are actually harvesting a little early simply because when we ship to Australia, it truly has to be under 0.3. And, whether you've been in the hemp game before or not, most varieties, if you take them to full flower, they will be somewhere between 0.6 and 0.8 THC. So we really have to be under that 0.3% in order to ship this internationally. So we're harvesting early, but thankfully, due to me growing this crop before and actually tracking out graphically how the THC progresses, how the CBD progresses, I can feel super confident that if I ship these plants with their leaves and only grow them for 6 weeks, we'll be compliant and we'll still have significant amount of CBD that they're looking for that they can extract. The other thing that one reason why they chose us is because they knew that we had a variety that was terpinolene dominant, and that was something for their medical program that they needed. So it worked out perfectly. They are able to pay prices that's fair. Fair for us, fair for them. Everybody makes a little bit of money. And because we've put the diligence in years past of planting late, I had enough confidence to do this and feel like we'll be successful. I know you've heard me preach before and complain that caterpillars are my nemesis, and they certainly are. In the South, If you plant normal season, so plant early spring, let natural photo period take over, and then harvest in the fall, what you get is when the plant is at its peak, you know, that most delicate time, you know, 6 to 8 weeks, if it's normal planting season, it's at the hottest hot. You know, no matter how much you keep it watered, fertilized, the plants just struggle. They struggle with taking up fertilizer. They struggle with really fighting the sun and bud rot, and then the caterpillars will be at their peak. And so the caterpillars come in and put their frass all up in the buds, and then it just becomes this overwhelming, terrible scenario of bud rot and just wasted pesticide. That's the other thing. You know, we would apply pesticide twice a week, and this is BT and I forget the name, the caterpillar virus, which works decent, but is so expensive. I mean, so expensive, you know, probably a few $100s a week of pesticide application just to fill that, you know, maybe it helped 20%. This crop, I've applied foliar nutrients, and that's it. Let's turn around. So they're short. Yeah, they are. But we knew that going in. We had a limit. We had a D-Day date of, you know, November 15, it's going to freeze and this will be ruined. So with the time we had to plan, I'm pleased with this height. You know, this is a decent sized flower. I'm okay with this. With our limitations, I think we did okay. So, you know, as we always do, we have a lot of problems with times of a lot of rain, hurricanes and wind. And so, you know, we struggle with getting enough fertilizer on the plants at some points in time because it'll rain so much. We don't want to put more liquid fertilizer on it because they're already flooded. And so something we did to be able to continue feeding the plants during these times of really high rain is put slow release fertilizer actually under the plastic. So we tilled our beds, we prepped our beds, and then we put out slow release and then planted our clones right into that bed. This obviously has worked quite well. We did top it off with liquid fertilizer, and that helped boost a little bit at times as we could, but in short, it wasn't a ton of liquid fertilizer we put on. A lot of this was due to just our soil being right and our slow release fertilizer. I wish this was smell-o-vision, because all of these right here, these are what we've called THM Jack, in honor of the Jack varieties. It's high terpinolene and almost co-dominant with limonene, but terpinolene does take first place. But the smell is just unreal. Nobody likes to think this is hemp type 3, but it certainly is. So this right here is for the Australian client, and then of course I had to grow some for ourselves. This is the Fun Dip. So Fun Dip is also a type 3, but its terpenes it is myrcene dominant, but it just smells amazing and has over 3% terpenes. So that is quite impressive, and it certainly shows that after post-harvest. That's actually where the state came out and took a sample of my top bud. Yeah, this plant is pretty impressive in yield. You know, again, these were only vegged in the field for 3.5, 4 weeks. So I'll let this group go to full maturity, because this is just for us. So another 2 weeks or so on this, and the yield will be very, very nice. We do have lights, floodlights placed all around the perimeter. And We did have a few string lights in the middle just to compensate for what's not being hit from those outside lights. This is about 350 jack and 35 fun dip. Prior to today, I have not yet seen caterpillar damage, but did see this. So you'll notice a little bit of brown coloration, and then there's usually some frass down on the plastic. If I can get this in focus. You see small pieces of frass. So this is where the caterpillar is pooping. And so it eats into these buds, taking out chunks and pooping along the way. So this will obviously start to mold and be a piece of the plant that we'll have to get rid of. But I am pleased to say that so far, that is the only bud I have seen with any sort of damage or sign of caterpillar. Which, if you're in a northern climate, you might think is silly for me to keep harping on this, but as people start growing, you know, different types of different higher values down in the Southlands, you know, this is going to be a technique that saves a lot of money. So no botrytis in here, no bud rot. Just some good looking buds. You'll see some of them are starting to do the fall fade. I think if we were to grow these to full maturity, it would be a lot more prominent. See some loss in chlorophyll here. And then starting to get fade on a couple of plants. I think if we were to leave these for the full 8 to 9 weeks, we'd see a lot more of this. But like I said, we got to do a little bit early harvest just for regulatory purposes. So something we would expect, especially on this variety. This variety does have purple as cold temperatures arise. We have been having pretty cold nights. So to be honest, I did expect more than this, but that's okay. We've got down to, I think, 35 a few nights. Even though they're small, I am pleased with this crop. You know, our heads up for planting was that we went as fast as we physically could. You know, if I could go back, I would certainly veg these 2-3 weeks longer just to get that size, make it worth, you know, a little more per plant. But with the limitations we had, I'm pretty pleased with this.